I was served with divorce papers by my husband, who also asserted that I had cheated on him and that he is evidence. But all of this was orchestrated by my mill, who was the one who ended my marriage and attempted to steal money from my ex-spouse. As a result of such false charges, my husband Zach, who is 27 years old, and I, who am 25 years old, divorced this year. It was always my suspicion that his mother was involved, but it wasn't until 6 months ago that I discovered that my thoughts were correct owing to a mistake that she made. I was under the impression that Zach had also been given that knowledge about her. Nevertheless, to my astonishment, he has only got it now, and he is in a lot of trouble. Due to the fact that we both lived in the same area, Zach and I had known each other since we were children. Because of the large number of families with low incomes that found refuge in our area, it became notorious. Because my parents were going through a difficult period as a result of losing their employment, they decided to relocate there with my younger sister and I in order to save money. For a considerable amount of time, Zach's family has been there. Zach was left in the care of his parents because his mother was addicted to narcotics. His biological father was nowhere to be found, so Zach was left in the care of his maternal grandparents. When I was a senior at school, Zach was an exceptionally clever student. As a result, he assisted both my sister and me, and in exchange I assisted him with his tasks. It was through this mechanism that our parents learned of our friendship, which eventually developed into a romantic connection. Just a few years later, Zach received his diploma and moved away to attend college. He received a portion of the monies from his grandparents, and the remaining amount was covered by a scholarship. Despite the fact that nobody knew what she did for a living, his mother was continuously absent and did not even bother to bid him farewell. During my time at college, Zach would occasionally call me over FaceTime to explain how things were going on the other side of the city. However, as time went on, the number of calls that he made to me began to diminish. I made a lot of efforts to stay in touch with him, but when I realized that he was not in contact with me, I decided to withdraw my efforts. Shortly after that, he sent me a text message. Moreover, he abandoned me through a text message. Dealing with the end of a relationship that had lasted for such a long time was challenging, but I was able to recover and put in a lot of effort in my studies. The situation for my parents, on the other hand, had begun to improve, and they had been offered permanent positions at their jobs. It was now only a matter of a year or two before we moved out of that location together. For quite some time, Zach's mother had been spreading rumors about us throughout the neighborhood, claiming that we were making money by engaging in illicit activities. My mother and father made the decision to speed up the relocation process after having a few disagreements with her. After another 3 years, my college hosted a discussion with a young entrepreneur who was on the rise and whose company was seeing tremendous success. It was requested that I serve as the session's moderator. Upon perusing the list of attendees, I came to the realization that it was none other than Zach. Following the discussion, we went out for coffee to catch up with one another. He filled me in on everything, including the fact that his mother had married an immensely wealthy man at work, who raised him as his own and provided financial support for his enterprise. After I informed him about my portfolio, he suggested that I apply for a job. My initial response was to deny the offer since I thought it would be extremely awkward nevertheless. After his constant encouragement, I ultimately decided to accept it. Zach and I became closer over the course of the subsequent 6 months, and things were going really well for me in terms of my professional life. During a night when everyone else had departed, with the exception of Zach and myself, he made a proposal to me, stating that he was sorry for breaking up with me and that he did not want to risk starting a relationship with me again. I was overcome with feelings, yet I still said yes. Although we notified everyone the following day, his mother was not really pleased with the news. Unfortunately, the lunch that he planned for us to get to know each other turned out to be a complete and utter failure. When we were alone, his mother made cruel comments to me, calling my family and me gold diggers. However, when we were together, she was kind and affectionate toward him. I reminded her that we left the neighborhood by putting in a lot of effort and not taking the option of marrying a wealthy man, which would have been the easiest way out. After that, I informed Zach about the remarks made by his mother, which he requested that I disregard. My connection with Zach deteriorated over the course of the subsequent several months, as a result of his mother filling his ears with a lot of information and Zach believing a lot of it. I begged him to put his faith in me if he wanted us to remain together. And after our relationship went through a lot of ups and downs, we decided to get married and elope. Despite the fact that she was upset over missing the wedding, his mother managed to maintain her composure at the reception. We started our married life in the house that Zach and I had purchased together. I received a phone call from my sister on a Sunday, and she asked for some starter capital for her new business venture. I informed her that I would stop the call and give it some thought. As soon as Zach overheard me chatting, he inquired about the topic at hand. I informed him that I was going to contribute some money to my sister as part of my savings for her new business venture. Due to the fact that we were now a family, he made the offer to pay the total amount without any questions being asked. The gesture that he made moved me, and I agreed with him. Over the course of the subsequent few months, my sister's business reached an all-time low, and Zach began to grow concerned about his financial commitment to her endeavor. His behavior toward me at home, which was cold and dismissive, was a manifestation of his frustration. We stopped conversing in order to avoid the stress that was building up as a result of the disagreements that were over relatively minor problems. When he forgot that it was our first anniversary, the tension level in our marriage reached its highest point. In addition, I made the decision to spend some time with my parents. Zach and I had scheduled a modest get-together for our family after our anniversary, and because we had already planned and paid for everything, we decided to play the role of perfect hosts for the occasion. During this time, I received a phone call from Zach's mother, who informed me that she had found the ideal romantic partner for her son and asked me to get ready to leave. I refused to engage her and reminded her that she needed to get a grip on reality. She abruptly ended the call, indicating that she did not enjoy it. For the purpose of preparing for the gathering, I went back to my house and had a conversation with Zach about his mother. Not only was Zach intoxicated, but he did not reply to anything I said. The tension that existed between Zach and me was so obvious the following day that even my most distant cousins inquired as to whether or not something was amiss. In spite of my best efforts, Zach simply shrugged his shoulders and walked away. His return was accompanied by an envelope, which he said contained evidence that I had cheated on him. I was taken aback, and I made the decision to open the envelope. The documents for the divorce were included, as well as some inappropriate photographs of myself with another man. Despite the fact that I was unable to comprehend how this could be possible, I continued to attempt to convey to Zach that it was not true. He did not pay attention and asked me to go. He also stated that he ought to have listened to his mother and not become a member of a family that was involved in gold mining. A lot of it was beyond my comprehension. After making the decision to take me, my sister and I set out. I went back to my parents' place and sobbed while giving them the images and attempting to explain that I had not been cheating on Zach and that I had no idea what these pictures were. They offered me comfort, and my sister, after looking at the photographs, informed us that it was obvious that they had been altered in some way. Given that everything made perfect sense, we made the decision to chat to Zach the following day. Before my sister and I were able to leave the house the following day, Zach came knocking on the door. I was under the impression that he was also experiencing some sort of uneasy feeling, but in reality he was there to request that I sign the documents as quickly as possible. Both of us took a seat. In addition, I stated to him that I had not cheated, and that the photographs appeared to be fabricated because even my face was not visible in the photographs. After he had finished listening, he responded by saying that ever since he had seen the photographs, he had completely lost all trust in me and desired a divorce. Despite my efforts to persuade him, he demanded that I sign the documents or else he would launch a fraud case against my sister for taking his money because we had not created a contract. I was taken aback by his statement and tried to persuade him otherwise. In my brain, I could hear my heart beating, and I implored him to please find a solution to the problem, rather than dissolving our partnership. However, he was insistent about stopping our association, and he parted ways with me. Despite the fact that I was in utter disarray, I did not want to tamper with him because of his status. On the other hand, I did not read the divorce papers and I did not sign them. Additionally, at this time I became aware that I was 2 months pregnant, and my attorney made the decision to request child support from Zach. This was in addition to the alimony that Zach was providing for me, which I was not aware of. Zach came up to me as we were leaving the courtroom, and rather than congratulating me on the birth of the child, he expressed his satisfaction with the fact that we were terminating the relationship because he believed that we were gold diggers. As a result of his behavior, I was unable to answer since it crushed my heart. Over the course of time, Zach and I were able to resolve our differences and come to an agreement on shared custody of the child, which Zach was content with. During this time, his mother began to demand complete custody of him and return for additional compensation. After I had finished with her, I sent an email to both her and Zach informing them that my child was not up for sale and that I would file harassment charges against her if she attempted anything again in the future. As Zach read this, he admonished his mother to keep her distance from the situation. I knew the improper images were phony, but I had no idea who could have manufactured or planted them until I heard from a friend of Zach's that his mother was attempting to encourage him to get married to a girl in her group. I was clueless about who could have done either of those things. Despite the fact that Zach was extremely upset over the divorce, he chose to ignore his mother. On the other hand, now that she had been showing up at his workplace on a daily basis for the past 2 to 3 weeks, everyone was aware of how desperate she was. Upon hearing this, I was able to piece together the pieces and understand that it must be my mother-in-law who was responsible for creating those photos in order to create a breach between me and her son. On the one hand, I was enraged by her and wanted to get revenge on her, but on the other hand, I wanted to make sure that I did not let it disturb me for the sake of my child, so I made the decision to let it go until the appropriate time. I received an email from my mother-in-law 6 months into the process of our divorce procedures against each other. She inadvertently included my email address in the message that was sent to the girl who my mother-in-law was attempting to convince Zach to marry. My mother-in-law was on the cusp of divorce from her husband, and she knew that Zach would not be able to finance her luxurious lifestyle. The email contained directions to this new female on how to woo Zach, and it was a plot to get all of Zach's money. After she had signed off with her phone number, I decided to call her and inquire as to why she would act in such a terrible manner against her child. Although it took her some time to catch up, she did not appear to be afraid. She stated that she could tell Zach everything she wanted, and he would still not believe her. As a result of her having a point, I decided to decline the call and instead send Zach the email. I even attempted to call him, but he did not pick up the phone. As a result, I determined that he must have read it and just did not want to talk to me further. Over the course of the subsequent several months, the divorce proceedings continued, and I gave birth to a lovely little girl. While Zach was away, he showed an incredible amount of support by establishing a trust fund in her name. As a result of the fact that he had not yet married the girl, and that I had not received many messages from my mother-in-law, I interpreted this as a hint that she had finally left his life. After some time had passed, it was already a year, and we had finally reached the divorce conclusion. When my daughter was a little bit older, I made the decision to leave the city and begin a new life. I had moved out of my parents' house and into a new location. At some point in time, Zach showed up at my door without any prior notice. This came as a surprise to me because we hadn't communicated since the divorce. There was a noticeable amount of sweat on his clothing, and it appeared as though he had been jogging. When he entered, I asked him what he was doing there. In light of the fact that he was now aware of the reason for our divorce, he expressed his sadness and expressed his regret for what had occurred. Although I was perplexed, he continued by explaining that he was at his mother's house during a time when things were going poorly between his stepfather and his mother. While he was searching through her closet for a towel, he came across the photographs of me engaging in infidelity. It came as a surprise to him because he had never seen those photographs to anyone else save me, so he brought them home in a stealthy manner. After that, he recalled my assertion that the photographs had been altered, and a few days later, he had a friend who was a photographer check them out. The results of the examination confirmed that my assumptions were correct. That is when he came to the realization that it was his mother who was responsible, and he rushed to apologize. It wasn't because I felt sorry for him that I started crying, rather. It was because I was finally shown to be innocent. During our conversation, I informed him that he ought to have believed me from the beginning, and that I was surprised when he did not respond to the email I had written him regarding his mother 6 months earlier. Inquiring, what email was it? When I presented it to him on my laptop, he was completely caught off guard. He added that this was the very first time he had had the opportunity to view this communication, and that he was currently engaged to the woman who his mother had wished for him to marry. Both of us sat in silence, contemplating the next steps that we should take. Following a period of silence that lasted for 1 hour, he eventually offered that we could get together once we had gathered our thoughts, and then departed. First, Zach and I had already made plans to get together at my house the next day. He explained to me that the reason he hadn't viewed the email earlier was because it had been deleted from his inbox as spam. As he studied everything in great detail, he came to the realization that his mother had actually gotten some documents signed by him, the reason being that she wanted to make sure that she would have some portion saved for our daughter. Although he found it strange, he signed the document in order to avoid his mother coercing him into marrying that girl once more. He went on to say that he became engaged to the girl after his mother divorced his stepfather and urged him to marry the girl when she was in a drunken state at the hospital. The reason for the girl's marriage was that she had suffered from alcohol poisoning. After some time had passed and things had improved, she went back and obtained another set of documents signed by him, informing him that these were vendor contracts that were connected to his engagement. After reading the contracts, he decided to sign them because, on the surface, they did not appear to be fraudulent. He claimed that he was clueless about the contents of those papers, and that he was now terrified. We both came to the conclusion that it would be preferable to get in touch with his attorney as soon as possible. Incredulous that my mother-in-law would have the chutzpah to carry off such a complex ruse, Zach's attorney, who was also his stepdad's brother, was extremely impressed. However, he wanted us to be aware of the truth, despite his sympathy for us. However, this was not sufficient evidence to convict her. After I brought up the email, he stated that she could come up with 100 different ways to demonstrate that it was not hers. A confession from her was the only way to legally retrieve the papers that had been taken from her. After expressing our gratitude for his time, Zach and I went back to our various homes to give it some thought and to ensure that it remains a secret from everyone for the time being. I was aware that Zach's mother did not have a lot of affection for me, and I believed that if I were to get under her skin, it might result in her admitting her entire scheme. The following day, after receiving Zach's approval, I called my mother-in-law while recording the conversation on my phone. It wasn't until the third time that she picked up the phone, and she was really impolite, asking me why I was disturbing her. I said to her that I would go right to the point because I didn't love talking to her either, and I inquired as to the reason why she ended the marriage that Zach and I had. The situation was so stressful that she was at a loss for words. I continued by explaining that I was aware that she was involved in it since she was intending to steal all of Zach's fortune, and that I was curious as to why it was so important to end our marriage. At long last, she admitted the truth after a string of unsuccessful attempts to deceive. While I was a part of Zach's life, she stated that there was no way that he would take anything she said into consideration. According to her, he placed the most faith in me, and if he betrayed that trust, it would make him weak and vulnerable, which would allow her to get inside his head. She admitted that she had obtained the photographs from a friend who had photoshopped them and then sent them to Zach's workplace. Despite the fact that I was upset to learn this, I attempted to acquire more information about the email from her, but she did not say a word, so I ended the call abruptly. Zach received the audio file that I had supplied to him, and after listening to it, he informed me of his intention to obtain some information from his current fiancée. The following day, Zach extended an invitation to her to meet him at a posh restaurant. In light of the fact that they had not gone on any dates prior to the engagement, he began by being curious in her family by asking her questions. Zach became irritated because she was unable to provide answers to even the most fundamental queries on her parents. Taking into consideration the speed with which his mother was pushing forward with her plan, he requested that she reveal the truth before it was too late. In a moment of vulnerability, she revealed to him that she was not, in fact, the daughter of his mother's friend, but rather a college student who had met her at a yoga class. According to her, she confided in his mother about the difficulties she was having financially. She went on to say that his mother had spoken negatively about him, stating that she was the victim whose fortune was taken by him, which spurred her to seek it back. His mother provided a solution, which was to appear to be from a wealthy family and marry Zach in order to finally become wealthy. Zach became overcome with emotion and made an offer to the girl to provide financial support for her school if she agreed to support him in exposing his mother after stating that she would give it some thought. She then left. Immediately following this, Zach came to my place and filled me in on everything he knew about his new fiancée. At that very moment, he received a phone call from her, in which she informed him that she was prepared to collaborate with him since she did not feel comfortable fooling someone in the same way that his mother had cheated him. Zach expressed his gratitude to her and assured her that he will get in touch with her regarding the plan in the near future. I shared all of this information with my sister in the hopes of receiving some advice, and she devised a strategy to catch my mother-in-law in the act of disclosing her intentions to take Zach's inheritance. During the time that my sister was explaining the plan, I took Zach on a call. She stated that because we had access to Zach's fiancée, who was also his mother's accomplice, we could ask her to set up a private meeting with Zach's mother, asking her to either give her the details of the plan or get it all revealed in front of Zach. Additionally, she stated that we might ask her to inform Zach about the plan. In the event that Zach's mother consented to speak with her, she may install covert cameras at her residence, thereby capturing the conversation and eventually catching her in the act. Zach thought it was a good idea and asked his fiancée if she would be willing to participate. We moved on with the proposal after she gave her approval. She, whom we will refer to as Stacy, called Zach's mother and requested a meeting to further discuss the plan. However, she was met with resistance, and Zach's mother inquired why she was so interested in the plan. Stacy stated that she was uncertain about the motives of Zach's mother, and that she desired to be a part of the overall plan in order to prevent being taken advantage of. After some hesitation, Zach's mother finally consented to meet her at her home the next day. During the time that they waited for Zach's mother, they concealed cameras beneath paintings and vases. Stacy was unable to make any contributions since Zach's mother arrived and sat down. The implication was taken by Stacy, and she inquired about the agreements that Zach's mother had signed. She inquired as to how Stacy was aware of it, and Stacy responded by stating that Zach had informed her. In response, Zach's mother stated that the documents contained Zach's property as well as his savings in the bank. Stacy inquired as to whether or not that was not sufficient. According to Zach's mother, in order to keep up with her lifestyle, they needed to do a great deal more. Additionally, she stated that her subsequent plan was to arrange for Stacy and Zach to get married, then to make Stacy the nominee for Zach's firm, and finally to arrange for Zach to be killed in an accident so that she would automatically receive the money. Stacy was taken aback, but she continued by inquiring as to whether or not such harsh steps were required. Zach's mother used lies about her son to justify her composure and stated that he had another strategy in place to catch his mother in the act. Was certain that it was plenty to have her caught, but before turning her over to the authorities, she wanted to demonstrate to everyone that she was not who she claimed to be. Considering that his mother was interested in his business, he stated that he would pretend to hand it up to her once he passed away. In this manner, Stacy would not be required to marry him, and he would be able to expose his mother in front of everyone at the same time. Because it was his way of exacting revenge for everything he had been through, we were all in agreement. The following day, we explained the strategy to his attorney and showed him the film that we had prepared. He had no problem with it as long as no one was wounded in the process. To carry out his plan, Zach summoned his mother to his residence and informed her that the situation was critical. It was his mother who arrived, and he shared with her how his life had become devoid of meaning ever since he divorced me. He shared with her his desire to abandon the business and everything else in order to be able to lead a peaceful life in the mountains. Zach made an effort to convince his mother to change his mind, but he said that his decision was irreversible and that he intended to make her the beneficiary of his money once he passed away. The mother of Zach was taken aback but delighted. He informed his mother that he would host a farewell party to meet everyone one final time after his will was in place, and that he wanted her to sign some paperwork before he could begin the process. His mother consented to this plan. The papers that he had signed were the same ones that she had signed in the past, and he was able to get his hands on them because his mother phoned Stacy shortly after her meeting with Zach in order to prevent her from participating in the plot. After she had obtained the funds, she promised that she would pay Stacy attention to his mother in the event that she pushed him. During the time when he and his mother were strolling on the terrace, he intended to turn out the lights and then replace himself with a dummy, which his mother would then push. Also, he installed night cameras so that he could provide evidence later. Everything went according to the plan. Zach started off by greeting everyone and announcing his goals. After his mother gave a speech that was filled with a lot of grief at the loss of her son. The invitation was extended to me together with my daughter, and Zach's mother did not miss an opportunity to make me feel inferior to her, but I chose to ignore her. She started seeking for Zach by the time the night was over, so that they could have a private conversation on the terrace. She decided to follow Zach because he was already there, which was convenient. She began by describing how he was the love of her life and how difficult it was for her to part ways with him. After that, she moved on to discussing topics related to money and how she was able to maintain her lifestyle. As soon as we turned down the lights, she thought that this was the ideal opportunity for her to force Zach down the cliff. After Zach swiftly replaced himself with the fake, we heard a thump fall to the ground. Zach clapped, and the attention of the world was drawn to his mother, who was hanging over the side of the cliff to determine whether or not Zach had fallen. When the lights were turned back on, everyone looked up at her because they saw the dummy lying on the ground. Zach was able to catch her and introduce her to everyone, despite the fact that she was completely taken aback and sought to flee. While his mother continued to pitch a fit, he delivered a speech in which he explained everything with great detail. My call to 911 resulted in Zach's mother being brought into custody at long last. This will be the final update on this saga because it is the 5th update. Immediately following the celebration, Zach's mother was not rescued by anyone, including her husband and her parents. Shortly after that, she was brought before the court, and on the basis of the petition that Zach had filed against her, she was charged with attempted murder and financial fraud. She entered a plea of not guilty to both of these charges. Despite the fact that she asserted that she was innocent, Zach's attorney assured him that there was no reason to be concerned about the situation given the proof that they had. In the end, Zach's stepfather also submitted a petition for divorce from her. Zach made the decision to provide Stacy with the funds necessary for her college degree and ended up giving her the money. Moreover, he returned to my residence and inquired as to whether or not I would be willing to give our relationship a second shot. Since he had gone through a lot, I told him that I would not be able to help him at this time, but I promised him that he would always have my support. In agreement, Zach departed. Due to the fact that my sister's business had begun to become successful, she decided to restore the money that she had stolen from Zach. Zach came to the conclusion that he needed some time off from his job and traveled to his cabin in the mountains to spend some time there. On the other hand, I have begun working now that my daughter is of an age where she can do so, and I am preparing to relocate to a different location in order to take advantage of greater prospects.